internet exchange points around Africa. We are very proud to partner with the African Union Commission to implement internet exchange points in 30 countries around Africa, which is more than half of the African countries. And we also have the African Peering Interconnection Forum, which has become the forum where Africans meet every year to discuss about interconnection and traffic exchange issues. We are very proud that we are going to have the 4th edition of this forum in Casablanca from September 3 to 5. We are very happy that many of you are joining us there, and I would like to invite those of you who have not heard about it until now to go on our website and see, and we'll be happy to see you there. I would like to say that whatever we do, we are not doing it alone. We believe in partnership. I mentioned the African Union, but we also work in partnership with AFNOG, with whom we partner in almost everything, but also with in the interconnection and traffic exchange program, with AFRINIC, that helps us, for example, by providing us expertise, and others like AFTLD. So I would like to say that Africa has a bright future, and the Internet Society is trying to cater for that future.
Thank you, David. I think some impressive feats and impressive facts. What I'd like to do is open up a discussion in the circles where we are right now. And to spark the discussion, you have submitted a number of topics in the survey that was sent out to you, an invitation to this event. And Christina's created this little word cloud in the shape of Africa with some of the words that were most recurrent from that input that we got. I would like to encourage to take one of these words and start and spark the discussion to see what are the next steps that we do on this, and what is it that you can do in supporting what's happening in the region and within the Internet Society. And this would be very interesting to see if we can have a discussion about this for the next 20 minutes with a number of the topics. And who would be bold enough to select any one of these topics and kind of give us their view or the next step that you think should be taken and can be taken? I know many of these conversations have been had in the chapter workshop last week on Thursday, but I think it's good to open it up to this floor of discussion as well. Can I see a raise of hands of who was in the chapter workshop last Thursday with that we had? Thank you. So it's quite a few of you that already have a chance to discuss some of these topics. What's on your mind? Let us know. Speak out. This is your community. So who would be bold enough to give us a little first starter to break the ice? So we have somebody pointing at volunteer. I think we have a volunteer over here. Thank you so much, because the most daunting thing in the current environment is the microphone. We realize that. But it's necessary for our colleagues far across the seas to hear us as well. So thank you for opening the conversation. What is the topic at your heart?
Am I still Tim McGuinness? My name is Gabriel Ladjor Ndao from Gambia, ISOC chapter chairman for the Internet Society. I wanted to react to what David just said, and I had some ideas that have been really burning in my mind also. To first commend Internet Society for the bold moves that they're making to really open up and get the issue of accessibility in Africa, which is a major
the biggest
problem,
word. Yes.
which is very, very important in Africa. And even when you go to any African country, in Gambia, we still have less than 5% internet penetration. And many of the barriers continue to be hovering around the issue of accessibility. And so the internet exchange point is one of the solutions. There are many other issues that need to be addressed. But having an IXP would definitely help the local content and also make the internet more cheaper because one of the major problems we have is the cost of internet access. And in our countries here, many of the people, the internet penetration is through the mobile. There is over 95% penetration in our countries. However, many of the solutions that we have tend to focus on not mobile platforms. And smartphones are getting cheaper, but it's still cost prohibitive. In Gambia, I did a survey for the United Nations as a consultant and found that 97% of the population, even though we have 95% mobile penetration, but 97% of that 95% were using mobile phones that can only do SMS and telephony. You know, the cost is coming down. But trying to find solutions, we have to start thinking about that, because the cost aspect and the ability to, the affordability aspect, you know, in terms of the end user, must be factored into our discussions as well.
In terms of accessibility, what are some of the projects going on, and what's on your radar? What are you doing in your regions to improve the accessibility? Let's see if we have any additions to that topic. Also in other regions, yes. Are you willing to comment on that? And sure. If I could ask you, I got a brief request because we have cameras left and right. If I could ask you to stand up when you speak, because it allows our outside audience to see that.
Like a movie star.
Yes, yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm Olga from Argentina.
Yes.
What is happening in Latin America now is that most of all the governments of the region are building very big fiber optic networks, not only connecting main cities, but connecting very small cities in the interior. That is happening in Argentina, and in Brazil, in Peru, and in many other countries. That will boost connectivity in small towns and small rural areas that, for the moment, are paying higher prices and have lower bandwidth. So this is happening steadily and going forward in Latin America, thanks to perhaps after WSIS in 2005-03, all the governments started to incorporate in the local regulations and policies these issues about connectivity and accessible to internet. So, and also would like to stress the support of ISOC to other projects that we do in the region, IXPs. We have several. Argentina is a leading country in Latin America. We have, I don't know how many, I don't remember, like 13 in Argentina, and Brazil has many more. Some countries don't have IXP so far. We will have a regional IXP. We have one just starting. And also I would like to stress the support that Internet Society gives to one program that we have of capacity building in our region, which is called South School of Internet Governance. And Adrian was our student in the last school in Panama. Mm-hmm. We have organized that for 5 years in different countries in the region. Thank you.
So thank you. So with 60 IXPs in the program, I think, is that correct, what I've read? In 30 countries?
No, 30 countries.
30 countries?
Yeah, 60 workshops. In fact.
60 workshops taking, yes. From that, you know, let's say switch over what projects you've done in Argentina and some of the learnings that we have here. What is another topic in terms of the connectivity? What are the other requirements that are coming up? And I think we have some hands up. Thank you very much.
Maybe there was a question about affordability of equipment that Gabriel asked, and if there is no one, is it someone who can answer to that?
Affordability of? Are you referring to that topic? Okay. Do you mind if we take the answer and then we'll move on to the... So Dawit is joining over there and I'll move over here.
I'm Alan Greenberg. I come from Canada, and in general, people carry smartphones these days. Other than me, I still use a 12-year-old phone.
Okay.
but I have done a lot of work on accessibility, and the comment about the huge majority of people still using old-style SMS voice phones is true. But there's a whole bunch of applications that will do it. Banking, banking is the classic one that everyone knows about. But there are all sorts of other applications, and you need local entrepreneurs and champions to get them going.
Yes.
And it's quite amazing, the 97% penetration, I hadn't heard the number, but it's believable. How many of those people are, by most standards, illiterate? Illiterate. Whatever language that they can read and write. In many countries, a large number are illiterate, but they manage to use mobile phones.
Because they can talk, yeah.
And with the right kind of applications, they can also do practical things with mobile phones and simple applications which then interface with the internet.
Yes. Do you believe that
there are great possibilities?
To add on to that, do you think that not having a legacy and other countries having created legacy, will we be able to learn from the mistakes we made in the countries that have done this very quickly in order not to replicate those mistakes in other countries? And I'm going over here now for a quick remark because I know you had your hand up for a topic.
My name is Gideon Rob from .Connect Africa, Generation.Africa, which is about young people trying to revolutionize Africa. And the topic I was going to choose was about content. The reason why we are building networks and the reason why we are trying to reach out even to the villages with the internet is to have content consumed. And a lot of content that comes to Africa is, a lot of content that we have here is we have a lot of inbound data from outside all over to Africa, and we are just consumers. And I believe we are the continent that has the largest content, the largest maybe culture, and all these tribes, and if we could convert that to a very attractive, well-packaged content the whole world could consume. Because, well, governments are trying, they're open government, but not many people want to really, they're not interested, or maybe it's too complex for them. But if we can convert the content that we have from the village level, and there's, I was telling Walter sometime in Addis that if we can get the young people to, if you can get the young people to be involved at an early age, maybe at the first year in university, that will be the best way to embed this in their DNA. So when they grow out, they will be conscious about the internet and they'll grow the content for this Africa. Thank you.
So some phenomenal stories to tell, and I think, thank you for that contribution. I think the storytelling component will be very important to create the content strategies. Yes. Could I ask you to stand up also for the camera?
Thank you. My name is Ugo. I'm from .ng. Sorry, I'm from Nigeria. Forgive me for that. In Nigeria, we have a similar problem to what the Gambian said. Yes, we have fiber that has landed in the coastal towns. I mean, like in Lagos, we have 3 there. We have Main 1, we have Glow 1, and we have SAT3 has been there for a long time. I think we have 4 actually. So in Lagos, you could say bandwidth is affordable. But beyond the coastal town, as you go in to the, inland, it's expensive. So we have that issue, and we're looking at how to solve it. I know presently, we have an internet exchange point, and then we've tried to, about 3 of them, but we have a major, the first in Lagos. I know there's a proposal that's been submitted to the telecom regulator because they have a lot of money to make sure that internet exchange points are established in the 6 geopolitical areas of the country and have them interconnected. That way, it will serve as a hub for the various regions. Maybe ISOC could intervene in some way to see to the fulfillment of that objective. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution. Dawit, did we have, yes. And then I'll come over here. We have another remark here. Thank you.
Good evening once again. Sophie Martin, sorry. I'm Lilian Naroga. I represent the Uganda chapter. I don't know, from the chair, I would like to kind of steer the debate to something different on the map, something on rights. I know when it comes to Africa, what we usually hear about is accessibility and connectivity, but this is changing. The reality is many people are connecting and the figures are rising. And as Dawit mentioned, Africa is where the money is. We are seeing many of the multinational corporations, Googles and whatever, all coming to Africa. The issue right now is, as people are connecting, people are not feeling secure on the internet. The issue of how do we connect, gain accessible internet without us being surveilled. We're in a forum earlier this week on the Africa Internet Governance, the first school on internet governance in Africa. And one of the most underlying issues was the issue of privacy and security. We are seeing that in Nigeria, the government has kind of gone into buying surveillance, technology. So what I would like to hear from the countries here, I know with whatever is happening in the US, China, God knows, all these countries, where you're from, the countries that are doing surveillance, how can we deal with such a problem in Africa where we are talking about having real connectivity, but at the same time people are feeling insecure connecting online? Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. I think a very valid point. And I'm moving over here with the mic.
My name is Tariq Mirghani from Sudan, from Sudan Internet Society, .sd registry for Sudan. I want to talk about internet traffic in Africa. If we want really to develop internet in Africa, I think we have to talk about 4 important things. First, our projects, IXPs, and connectivity between these IXPs to generate real traffic inside Africa. The second thing, root name servers. That's the point I want to. There is just, I think, 3 or something like that root name servers in Africa. This is a very big problem in Africa. I think we need ISOC and in combination with the ICANN to try to help us in Africa to create more root name servers in Africa. This is a very important thing. The third thing is the content. We need to develop the content in Africa so as to have a local traffic and local internet in Africa. And to do so, we need many projects. We need to develop our IDN, for example. The problem in Africa is that most of the countries in Africa are using Latin language, Latin characters. Few countries, Arab in the north, Amhari and Tigray in Ethiopia, and some in the west. So in those countries, so IDN is not get really in Africa. No one care about it a lot in Africa for that reason. I think we need to develop more about IDN in Africa. Okay, that's all.
Thank you so much for those comments. I will take the last point in the discussion, and I know we have many hot topics on the agenda.
Just very quickly, we understand the importance of local language and local content. In fact, together with UNESCO and OECD, we did a research that showed that to improve access, to have better networks and also to improve affordability, it is important to have local content. So maybe you can look at that research, which gives a good insight, and I completely agree with you that it is important to give, to enable local languages and also alphabets on the internet.
I know we have many conversational topics going on. Okay. We will take 2 minutes to wrap up this conversation. We have more conversation coming up on this part of the table regarding 2 very specific topics. I encourage you throughout the duration of the conference to keep the conversation going. This was a sparker. Unfortunately, we don't have much more time than that. Yes, David, one last remark and then we will follow back on the program on this end.
Okay, Paul Mushane from Kenya. I just only want to comment about the text that's on the map, and that is internet. So I'm going to talk about it from a layman's perspective, because I know here we're really involved in the more, let's say, the more complex aspects of the internet. But from the layperson, especially coming from Kenya, when you talk of internet, they're thinking Facebook, they're thinking Twitter, they're thinking of email. So, and as much as we also talk about local content, and also the explosion of the mobile phone, you'll find not so many people will go to the local news site as the first site. They'll think of Facebook. So the question perhaps is, how can you build, and maybe this is a challenge, how can you build content such that it is as more attractive than Facebook? How can it be more localized? And that is a challenge that
I see many, many nodding heads with regard to this topic, and I do have to stick to the time schedule. I'm really sorry. We could have this conversation for 3 hours. We actually had a full day of conversation back on Thursday. I would encourage us to wrap up this part of the conversation, David, and I'm going to invite you to hand the correct badge back to the correct person and to come back to the table over on this side, and we will continue our conversation regarding internet governance and privacy. And this conversation will be led by Markus Kummer. Please refrain from making a bar stop, because that would take us terribly off traffic. Please go to the tables. There will be plenty of time later this evening to catch up over drinks. So thank you for joining us back here at the U-Shape. Thank you for joining us back at the, yes, we are on a tight schedule, so I would like your cooperation in moving back to the table here. Thank you. Could we ask you to move back to the table on this side, gentlemen? Excuse me. Could you join us over on this side? Excuse me. Excuse me. Could you join us on the table? We're continuing the meeting in a couple of moments. Thank you. Excuse me, gentlemen. Thank you. And thank you for joining us at the table. We'll convene in 30 seconds.
There is a chance to talk about the high cost of terminals. I would like to tell a story.
Okay. Let's see if we can in the time. So thank you for joining us over here at the table. Could you please join us at the table? We're starting the meeting now. Thank you. Let's keep the bar closed for now. We don't want any drinks now. Can you join us now, please? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, yeah, please. Can you join us there? Can you please join us there? Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Can you please join us? Thank you for joining us.
From another party.
Could you join us at the tables there? We're continue the meeting. Thanks. We have feedback on the mic here on the table.
Okay, it's difficult to fight against the bar, but I will try and do so anyway. I was Victor Donang in the previous session, now back to my original identity, Markus Kummer. I'm the VP for Public Policy of ISOC. In the past, at these ISOC and ICANN meetings, we had a discussion more on ICANN issues, but this time we actually made a survey and what would be the issues you guys would be most interested in. And I think it follows up nicely on the previous discussion. It was great to see the engagement and listen to your comments. What came out first in the survey was internet governance and then privacy, and that was basically the reaction to the recent revelations about surveillance activities of many governments. Now, these two issues are closely interlinked. Obviously, the revelations, it's something many people knew or thought it would happen, but nevertheless, there was a big surprise about the scope of these surveillance activities. The Internet Society issued a very strong statement that we expressed our concern. We do respect, of course, the government's right to secure their citizens, but at the same time we expect governments to respect the rights of their citizens, and the right to privacy is an elemental and fundamental human right, and we made that clear in our statement. And just a few days ago, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights made a very, very strong statement, which is very complementary to what we have said, but with a much stronger focus on human rights, rights to privacy. Now, this will without any doubt have an impact on internet governance discussions, as governments around the world feel uneasy about this and feel there is a need to discuss this. Now let's look at it from a positive side. It's good this discussion happens, that we actually discuss openly what are the limits of government activities, and if there are surveillance, that we discuss what it is and what are the boundaries. And we had a very disruptive conference last December in Dubai, the WICID, which was divisive, but we have also had a rather positive conference in May, the World Telecommunications Policy Forum, where you could sense there was a very conscious attempt by governments to build bridges, to talk to each other and to find back to a positive agenda. Now we move towards the IGF in Indonesia in October, and that will provide an excellent opportunity to build bridges, and building bridges is the overarching theme of this year's IGF. And then next year the challenges come with, there's a development conference of the ITU, there will be WSIS plus 10, and there will be the plenipotentiary conference. And it is to be expected that many of the debates will be repeated, and many governments will call for a stronger intergovernmental oversight over the internet governance arrangements. We have always maintained that the arrangements as they have evolved, they are built on the underlying technology based on a distributed internet as a network of networks with a distributed technology, and so are the arrangements. They are on top of that technology, and they are equally distributed. No single entity is in charge. We are here at the ICANN meeting. ICANN is, of course, an important actor, but it's not the only actor. ICANN is responsible for the DNS, but there is for the allocation of IP addresses. We have the regional internet registries, and we are happy to see how Afrinic in the African continent has evolved into a very efficient actor in this part of the internet governance ecosystem. And then, of course, there is the IETF and the ISOC. We obviously take pride very much to be the institutional home of the IETF, and the IETF produces the underlying standards. Without standards, there is no internet, and the standards are open, global, and interoperable. And all the common to all these elements in the internet governance ecosystem is that standards and policy development processes are open, inclusive, and transparent, and everyone who is interested can participate and take the microphone and speak. And this is very much different from traditional intergovernmental processes where the people at the microphone are the governments. But I don't really want to speak that much. I would rather like from you, and I presume the issue foremost on most people's mind is precisely how does the surveillance activities, the revelations about the scope of these surveillance activities affect the perception of how the internet should be run. Security, of course, is a big concern, but there is no such thing in any phase of human activity where you can guarantee absolute security. Security is always a risk assessment, and in our view, it should not be a zero-sum game between security and privacy and openness. I think they should be mutually reinforcing, and ultimately the question is, do you want to have security through transparency, or do you want to have security to secrecy and obscurancy? But we always believe in transparency, and we think the best way to assure the security of people is in an open dialogue and have a transparent dialogue, accepting, of course, that there may be measures necessary for governments to intercept communications, but this should always be done on the basis of rule of law, with judicial oversight and in a transparent manner. But please, who would like the floor? Stefano. Okay.
Okay. Let me say that Stefano Trumpi. Okay.
They had the gain up too high on that.
Italian chapter of ISOC and member of the GAC in ICANN. So this theme of security is really intriguing. In this sense, I'll try to explain. In the GAC, as well as in the Security and Stability Committee of ICANN, we have a lot of interaction with the so-called law enforcement agencies. And then, because the problem of security is lower down the cybercrime, find child pornography or things like that, that I think all of us think that are to be done for the community safeness and so on. But the point is that there should be a transparency by these agencies and saying what they do in order to ensure that the citizens that are that do not anything risky then have the impression that they should not be controlled. But the real problem now with this scandal of PRISM is coming from the fact that apart from these bodies that are in the open, then there are the so-called secret services that act in the shadow. And then, what is the real problem? That in these cases there is no transparency at all. Otherwise, you should not call them secret. So, and then I noticed that, especially in the papers, in Italy, but in every country, I think, there is a sort of declaration or sort of fear that any one of us, any citizen, could be tracked from the moment when he go out of home for breakfast or for doing anything until he goes back. But still, if you are connected to the internet, even in the night, you could be trapped. So, and this is a situation where also with the video for controlling the movement in the city, in the shops, in the banks, and so on, there is the possibility to an extreme that any citizen is controlled every minute during the day. As soon as he uses credit cards, go to a shop, is interacted with, is intercepted by a video camera and things like that. But we live in this society. And then we should be in a condition to say, okay, it is possible that I'm controlled. But in any case, the governments should give the confidence to the citizens that if they are behaving in a way that is along the laws and the good behavior, they will not be controlled. They will not be intercepted, let's say. And we have to realize that this is our life now, because we live an enormous number of traces during the day. But let me say in the end that some commentators are saying why the Internet society is so silent, because they interpreted the commentary that you mentioned before as being too soft, because there should be some strong position and crying for the scandal that is an enormous scandal. This is the condition of our life, and then everything is connected to the confession of this guy that is now in Russia. So I'm not saying that we should not be preoccupied about that, but Internet society should be in condition to shift, to give appropriate information, not to be excessively alarmed, and not everything is responsibility of the network, of the Internet. So this is the main point. Thank you.
Hello. I come from America, and it seems like the way I'm American, and I apologize to the world on behalf of my country. We seem, the politicians in America seem to look at the world as two kinds of people. There's Americans and there's foreigners. Oh, my name is Mark McCall. I'm the founder of the Church of Reality, and I'm in the non-commercial stakeholders group. The way I see it is that the Internet is something that was spontaneously created by the people of the world, not necessarily the infrastructure of it, but the community. And that the community of the Internet belongs to the world, and it's also something that is a major step in human evolution. And the way humanity evolves in the future is going to depend on the freedom of the Internet. And I see that what the NSA is doing is a threat to the Internet community and a threat to people all over the world. And it's something that's basically, I see it as the United States has suspended its constitution in order to do the kind of things that they're doing, because they're doing it in secret courts and secret decisions with no oversight. And that is not, by anybody's interpretation what the Constitution was based on. So I agree that I think that, that this should be something that people should be extremely alarmed about, that if you're not waking up in the middle of the night screaming, you don't understand what's going on. And the people in Washington just don't get it. They talk about things like, well, we should have an off switch for the Internet, as if they own the Internet, and as if they think that, the Internet has become so entwined in human civilization that if we turn the Internet off, we would have massive casualties, because the power system, everything would go down. We've gone to become completely dependent on the Internet. And I think that two things. One, that we should do everything we possibly can to decentralize it, to make sure that no one country can, affect the Internet the way that the United States currently is. And the other thing is that we need to, I think, comprehend the importance of the Internet, that the Internet is something that sort of has happened, but I think that we need to raise the our awareness of how valuable the internet is and freedom of the internet is to the citizens of the planet, and to look at this as if the way the internet is evolving, that at some point, countries is a model that's going to become obsolete, and we're going to end up have an internet governance that's going to end up replacing nations at some point in the future, and that we should not look at nations as being the owner of its citizens, and nations have right, and we're a subset of the nations, but that the internet is a community that represents the people of the human race, and that we are dominant over countries, and that we should start looking at the internet as an uprising of the people to form a common community all over the world.
Siva Subramanian from Internet Society India, Chennai. I was listening to Markus and all his right ideas, which are that of the Internet Society, and particularly impressive are the ideas of ensuring security transparently, and not making sure that security and privacy is not a zero-sum game. It is important that these ideas get into the minds of those people who make policy, and I was just thinking whether it would be possible for the Internet Society to create a policy discussion circle, not at a lower level but at a very high level, and the right place to start is probably this room. And my friend from Sri Lanka had spent 2 months in Harvard under Lawrence Lessig, and he probably has a better understanding of how the internet works now. And we have Markus Kummer with all his experience in UN, and Tracy, and many people from government. From that, we can start right here at ICANN, through the GAC, identify some people and form a circle of policymakers from government, and start some kind of a formal or informal policy discussion group, so that the right decisions are made with right understanding, and then the circle expands to include many countries. And I think governments would find this idea appealing, and ISOC, instead of leading, kind of facilitating a discussion among governments, and we could do it in a structured manner. That would answer Stefano's question on why the Internet Society is so silent, and to some extent I also agree with him that the Internet Society is not doing enough. And so one way that we could do enough is to actually hit the nail on the head and get to the policy circle and make sure that the right policies are made. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Carlos Gutierrez from Costa Rica, from the Costa Rica ISOC chapter, and also representative to GAC. This is one of the few cases where I don't agree with Stefano. When we started to talk with the Internet Society in Costa Rica, it was because there was the question about intellectual property. If Sony would call an ISP provider in Costa Rica and tell him there is a song of Sony which is protected and there isn't a service, so shoot it down. And we didn't know what to do. The ministry was asking us, and somebody told me, call the Internet Society. And we got people from the Internet Society, and we made a very strong argument that nobody could shut down some contents in the Internet unless there was a judge's order. And we won this position for some time, but it was through the help of the ISOC public policy people that came down and participated in this activity. very soon afterwards, we had the discussion if you need a judge order to listen to the calls, you know, and then the United States decided, okay, you need an order to listen to the calls, but you don't need an order if you just want the positioning of the phone, the time when it called, and what numbers they called. For that, you don't need an order. And immediately, many Latin American countries copied this position. And of course, the only one who cannot be positioned in the room is Alan Greenberg, because he's running around with CDMA phones. But if you buy a phone, a smartphone with the GPS, and you turn it on, then you are giving away your position, and you are giving away your information. It's your choice that has given them the information. And when we had the question before about the high price of terminals in Africa, I wanted to share just with you what we did in Costa Rica. And I don't know if this reduces or not the price of terminals, but I would like to ask you to check in your country who is selling you the terminal, who owns the terminal. Is it your terminal because you bought it? Or is it your provider who is financing you a terminal? And in Costa Rica, we took the position that the terminal has to be owned by the user. If you get it subsidized, you get a separate bill for the subsidy, and that the phones have to be unlocked. And operators hate this. They say, oh, your phones are going to be much more expensive because they're unlocked. But we fought for unlocked phones, and we fought for a database of phones, so in case your phone is stolen, and the operators hate us, but we have the idea that you should be the owner of your phone, and if you get number portability, you take your phone with you. And every day they tell us, oh, you're increasing the price of the phone. We have been telling the government to reduce the taxes of the phones. And I don't know if we're right or not, but operators hate us. But I think we're thinking in terms of the user. And when you worry about the price of the phones, when you worry about if they're chasing the people, you have to ask those questions. And you have to go to the policymakers and ask those questions and ask them for a solution. And then in terms of privacy, I want to remember 2 years ago when I look at the Swiss policy of the private sector for the internet age. The private association in Switzerland said one of the biggest issues is to have an individual personality in the internet age. How many of us have 5 accounts, email accounts? I have 3 under the same name. How many countries discuss if we should have 1 or many personalities in the internet? And of course, if the government gets the feeling that you have 2 different personalities, one which is straightforward and the other one for laundering money, then we have a problem. I want to go back just to the issue. Those are choices that we do on technology. We have to be aware about the implications of our choices of the use of technology, and immediately, as you said, go to the government and tell them what we want. And in this case, ISOC has been very supportive in Costa Rica on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Sainamore with the Internet Society. And I want to come back to Stefano's comments, because one of the things we've been trying to do for a very long time in ISOC is amplify our voice. And we choose to amplify our voice through our members and our chapters and our partners and our activities and our events. And when we put out statements like that, it's actually to aid everybody in this room so they can take those statements, build on them, bring them into the appropriate forums, get press attention for them. Everybody in this room taking those statements and our work and amplifying it will give us the voice and the presence that I heard Stefano calling for. I think, however, that was only one component of what Stefano was saying. I think he was actually looking for a statement that was more activist or something. And, you know, one of the principles we've driven to in the Internet Society is the only way you can change people's mind is by engaging and talking to them. So you need to push hard enough to get a message across and to get some traction, but also so that you can keep the discussion going. So we choose usually, actually, probably always, to fall this side of something which is really activist or, maybe more in your face. And I know that's something we hear from a lot of our members from time to time. I wouldn't suggest that everybody goes away and gets really activist, but if you think it's not worded strongly enough or it should be worded strongly enough, feel free to build on those. Be thoughtful about when you think it's appropriate for you to say you're doing that in the name of ISOC or your chapter. But it is always easy to reference statements we've made and then build on those or amplify them or say it would have been, even more helpful if we had understood X. But really, with respect to being more visible and out in front of a lot of these issues, we need everybody's help in this room. We really need every one of you to help amplify our voice and our messages. And one of the things I know Marcus, Walda, everybody in this room is looking for is more input from here, from everybody in this room and elsewhere and online, about how we can do that better. Timeliness was something we tried to improve. There are social media. We're trying to get more campaigns, more attention. But help us figure out how we amplify our voice and how we help you amplify your voices. That way I think we'll be a lot more successful in terms of having the impact I know we all want in the world.
Thank you for that. And building on that, I would also like to recall our statement was relatively early out, and it was built on press reports. It's not, we didn't have the facts, but I think what the reason, in the course of the discussions, I think the early facts got more or less confirmed, and what the official statements said, well, yes, okay, And I like the statement by one of the security guys who said, well, in order to find a needle in a haystack, you need to build a haystack. And the haystack is basically sweeping up all the data. And it's data mining, and you don't need to read the emails. You have the data, as you said, Stefano. But the point well taken, and we are basically, yes, I will pass on, obviously, the microphone, but we would like to switch. We actually started now we reversed the order, started with privacy, but like to move into the broader internet governance discussions. And I would be very much interested learning from you how this is perceived in your countries. What is the impact, and does it affect the current existing internet governance arrangements? Will people then, and I think Brazil already made a statement saying they would look to the UN to have basically these discussions there. And the ITU was mentioned as the UN agency for telecommunications as the place for having these discussions on security, basically going back to the UN with that, and in what way this will influence the discussions next year on WSIS Plus 10, on the plenipotentiary conference of the ITU. But there are some people who already asked, this gentleman in the back was first there, yes.
The name is Akimbo Adibuni from Nigeria, .ng. Yeah. Well, I have the following questions to ask concerning the issue of surveillance, one, and internet governance. And I want to merge them together quickly because it concerns Africa the most. Fortunately, I've had cross-sections of reviews from other partners in Africa. And the first question is, who controls the internet? The second one says, who determines who should be excluded from the internet? The digital exclusion. And the final one is, how do we define cybercrime? Now, this brings us to why the previous speaker talking on if you have two emails, a good character online and a shady character, then there is need for a government or whoever is surveilling to actually know more about who you are. But the truth is, currently, Africa is excluded. So no matter how much surveillance you are putting into the internet, African countries, I will be speaking on behalf of Nigeria, are excluded digitally. We cannot move to certain places based on the fact that a decision has already been reached. So there's no need for surveillance. A decision has been reached on why you cannot transact business with such countries in Africa. I think the Internet Society could look into it, because currently the government is trying to help in my country. It is affecting the price. It is affecting rural access, because there is no way you create telecenters in the rural area and they're trying to learn open knowledge access. They can't get what they need, because one way or the other, whatever they want to transact online has been blocked. Now, as much as surveillance is concerned, we believe ISOC could play an advocacy role in ensuring that we are not digitally excluded, especially Africa. Thank you.
Oh, does this one work as well?
Yes,
okay.
go ahead.
Okay, then my name's Evan Leibovich. I'm with ISOC Canada. And in my day job, at least here in Durban, I'm involved with the at-large advisory committee of ICANN. And it's very interesting trying to make our voice, the voice of end users, heard within ICANN. And part of what I try and do is, between ICANN meetings, go amongst family, friends, total strangers, and try and get a feel for them about the importance of ICANN and what people think of it and the whole issue of domain names. And it almost seems like a line is being drawn between what's perceived to be industry capture of ICANN and government capture of a process like WCIT. And it's almost like a binary choice is being made between the two. Do you want something where industry controls the domain name system and names and numbers, or where governments do it? The real answer, I guess, is none of the above. But trying to figure out, how to steer through that choice. Right now, the fact that I'm here sort of is at least to myself, speaks to my own commitment to try and make ICANN more responsive, so that Plan B doesn't have to happen. But there's still work that has to happen within ICANN. There's still work that has to happen within IGF. These groups have to be more responsive to the needs of end users. This has to happen, because the alternative is a lot worse. But right now, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done within the status quo organizations. Thanks.
Rudy van Sneek from ISOC Belgium. To pick up on the question from Markus, how to get your government convinced about taking a good decision. I would like to sample some of what actions that happened in Belgium recently related to the data retention, which is also close to what we can call the privacy issues. And the government decided to write down a law, and they are going to vote on it. As you know, in Europe, the data retention law is specifying that each provider should monitor and log all the access to internet of each user for at least 6 months or a year or 2 years. That was the maximum. When the Belgian government decided to write that law, they didn't think about the fact that it's not just the big telcos, but also all the other players that are providing services, just like hosting services, like mail services, website services. They're all related to it. And what they forgot is that a lot of smaller companies in the country are providing these services, but not with servers hosted in Belgium, outside of Belgium. And that's already an issue. How do you handle such a law, such a regulation, when the servers themselves, the hardware itself, is not in your country? You don't have any legislation on it. And I think that's one of the issues that will pop up in the next IGF. And I think that's one of the critical items we have to try to cover, how to handle a regulation that is touching up the citizen, while the physical infrastructure is out of the legislation. that's one of the biggest issues that we're going to raise in the near future, because they are always trying to find the cheapest way to host, which means they will try to find where the cost is the lowest, where probably the legislation is the smoothest. So I think that's one of the issues on which I'm just taking Belgium as a sample. And I was asked by the government, explain us why this is an issue. So you see, it's some of the tasks that each chapter can fulfill in their country by having support from Markus or from his team to get a good policy. Because that's what is needed. If we want to cover our citizens, our users, we need a good policy. And it seems that government doesn't understand.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jayant Fernando from Sri Lanka, one of the founding trustees of ISOC LK chapter and GAC member for Sri Lanka. So a couple of thoughts on the issues that have been raised here. By way of introduction, I need to point out that ISOC was involved in training all of our technical people through the INET program in connecting to the internet, and we are grateful for that, and we have moved on. And one of the direct benefits of getting involved in the early INET programs was that we were involved in setting up a local internet exchange point, and then most recently, about 3 years ago, we went on to set up a mirror of a root server, and I think some participants were talking of setting up root servers, but I think mere setting up root servers is going to be difficult, but having a mirror of a root server might be the way to go, and our example is something that we can think of sharing. But on the question Markus raised about planning for next year, I think my perspective is similar to those expressed by my colleague from Chennai. I think there is a need for a broader policy dialogue at the high level. And I think since ISOC has gained so much momentum and a very good reputation both in government and private sector and civil society within the framework of a multi-stakeholder internet governance model, I think there is a need for a trust policy engagement with governments in preparation for what's going to happen next year, to convince governments of how they should get involved and come to some conclusions. So policy positions papers from internet society, which I don't see happening, penetrating government decision-making units in the, at least in the South Asian framework, might help to convince them to think twice before they take decisions about issues that are to be taken up next year. So I would urge ISOC to gear itself up with the local chapters and prepare policy papers with key points, responses to issues, so that decision makers will be ready with responses to effectively participate in considered decision making that is going to happen next year.
Thank you very much, and that is a very nice tee up for, I think we just reached sort of the end of our discussion. We did sit down after Wicked saying this is what you suggest is precisely what we need to do, and I think the revelations on PRISM gives a new sense of urgency on that, and the comments are well taken, and as I said in my introductory remarks, we can also see it as an opportunity. Now it's on the table. I mean, there will always be spies. There have been spies, I think, since the origin of mankind, and there will always be spies till right the end of history. But I think our point is, what is technically feasible is not always desirable.
it's very, very easy to spy on emails. Opening every letter is a little bit more complicated, and governments don't do that. They accept that postal secrecy is a sort of fundamental cornerstone of how you behave. Whereas emails, well, okay, just, you don't need to read them, you know, you just need to trace them and put them on the haystack so you can find the needle. But is this desirable? Because it's technically feasible. But if spies have the possibility to do so, they will do it. And I think it is the responsibility of society, and we are part of society, to have this dialogue and say, what do we want? What do we accept? What can we accept? I think we do accept that there may be a need for legal interception of communication, but this needs to be based on sound legal grounds, judicial oversight. We need to have warrants, whatever. There needs to be a process, and this needs to be open and needs to be transparent, that we know it happens. And there obviously is a great need, and the discussion was very helpful, and I think also very supportive of what we're planning to do. We're planning to have a very broad campaign for the open and sustainable internet leading up to next year's conferences. And looking back to WSIS 1 first phase, it wasn't easy, but the internet was not the same as it is now. The internet is much more pervasive, much more important in everybody's life and every government. It's much more on the radar. So the battle will be more difficult. And the points taken that we also need to improve our act, yes, I agree. You know, it's business as usual is not good enough. I think we have to be better at whatever we are doing. And also the point from the colleague from Nigeria on the developmental dimension, I think that is something we really need to take very seriously. I mean, just the fact that I think most people in the US would not be aware that it is difficult for someone from Africa to use a credit card. And that's also, the point was made in the DNS forum. Victor was very eloquent about that. And also the fact that $5,000 in the US are not the same as $5,000 in Cameroon. This is very basic, but I would say that this has not been addressed adequately in the past. And in the world of trade, whereas familiar in the previous life, there is a notion of preferential and differential treatment for developing countries. That's accepted. You know, give developing countries a special treatment, taking into account their purchasing power in tariffs, whatever it is. And this has not yet happened in the world of ICANN. And this is something I think we also need to look at going forward. But once again, many thanks for very thoughtful comments. And with that, I hand over to Lynn?
Not.
There we go.
It's certainly hard to close this kind of meeting when the discussion feels like it's not even quite yet gotten started and we're closing it. But I think that's the difficulties of weeks like this and meetings probably at this time of night as well. You know, Dawit started some of his comments which saying, you know, the future for Africa is bright. I have to say that I only wish the future of the internet was half as bright. Because, you know, I actually think the internet, its ecosystem, a lot of the players, the partners and managing organizations inside of it are going to face some of the most tough times, not sure that's even very good English, that we've faced. Surveillance without due process is abhorrent. There's no other word for it. It's abhorrent. It's contrary to human rights. And as bad as that is, it is going to cause a whole host of other reactions across the system, whether it's in a regulatory or a policy sense, or whether it's in ITU and calls for more government intervention. Marcus's comments about Brazil already looking towards the ITU. We're going to have to expend an awful lot of energy defending things that we think aren't helpful to the internet, because it won't give us the internet we want, which means our attention is going to be diverted from doing the things that are going to help us build out a more robust internet as fast as we'd like. So I think our resources, which frankly, and I'm talking generically, whether it's ISOC, us in our day jobs, or ICANN, or any of the RIRs, are going to be even more challenged, because we're going to keep trying to do the good work we're trying to do, and frankly, we're going to have to do an awful lot of other work, and I think we're going to have to fend off even more bad ideas than what, frankly, we've been used to. So, and I actually feel a little somber, I have to say, sitting here at this point, thinking about the work ahead of us. Any suggestions from here about things we can do to better amplify our voice, to get more teamwork, collaboration, cooperation, not only across every other ISOC person you see, but every other person you see on the street, people you work with, people you have breakfast with, other people in your company, other organizations, partner organizations. We really need to make this a real movement if we actually want to be able to put the time and resources to giving us the sort of internet we all want, and we've all actually been working really hard for a very, very long time. So, I'm trying to find some way to pick this up, but it may just be the hour or something. I'm having a hard time, because I think it's going to be a real challenge for all of us to do everything that we want to do going forward, in the defensive mode, as well as in, the more constructive. Let's build out the sort of internet we want. Having said that, I think there's a couple of, and Marcus, I think actually I hit my low point when you said spies will write the end of history. I'll probably wake up in the middle of the night remembering that quote and seeing what we can do to change that. So on another light, Walda opened this meeting saying we were trying a different format, and this was to bring all of ISOC's members together for one night. We tried a number of different formats, not just the combination of meetings, the structure in the back, trying to engage more dialogue and loosen it up. I think the sound didn't help in the first part of the session. I know sitting back there, it was all really quite muffled and not distinct, so it was even hard to understand what was being happened. There's probably nothing we could have done about that, but when you give feedback, and we really would like your feedback in terms of how well this meeting worked, what you would change, what you would do different, please include all components of it. But what we're most interested in is not that the sound system sucked, frankly, in the beginning, but the format, the structure. Would you like more engagement, more structured presentations? Anything that you think would actually help make it much more rewarding to all of you. We're all here to learn from each other. And then, as usual, and there has been a recall for a group photo at the end, so I've been asked to ask everybody to stay for the group photo at the back. I think the bar stays open. I'm not sure if the food's still there, so people can continue their conversations somewhat. And I think with that, I just want to say I'm still always humbled by the excitement, enthusiasm, and passion people have for the internet, the difference it's making in their lives. And, honestly, extremely humbled by the fact that people come here on a Sunday night after a very long day. The ICANN meeting feels like it should be over already, frankly. It's been such a long week, and it's not actually quite formally, officially started. So really appreciate everybody giving the time and coming. And we want to make this a really vibrant, rewarding meeting for everybody. So please help us understand how we can do that. I'd also like to thank Ruud for sticking with us here through an experiment. Ruud actually facilitated the African chapters workshop we had earlier this week, and it was outstanding, really was outstanding. So thank you for accommodating us as we tried to, as I said to Marcus, we're going to shake it up, Marcus. So with that, I think thank you, although I'm not sure if I really was the closing speech or if... Thank you. So group photo somewhere, and I think Dan's going to help us with that.
Why don't we try gathering back here where the fishbowl is? That might be a little bit better than doing it up in the front where the screens are so bright up there. So why don't we try to do that and get in close so that we can make a nice group photo here. Right? Don't be shy. Come on over. Yeah, let's get some people over here. Let's go and try to stand so we've got that wall, maybe that kind of beige wall behind us. We can get, get some people back here. Come on over. We're going to have a picture of all the chapters and other folks. Where did you get, that's a great badge. Where are those? All right. Standing is good. We'll have some people in the front. Come on over. Could you join us? Come on over, please. Come on over. Evan Leibovich. Come on over here. I don't know other people's names over there. I'd call you too, but come on over. Dawit, come on in here.
Yeah, you can shut down the screen. But I recognize the picture.
Okay, come on over, folks. Let's get you in here so we can get a group photo together. You gonna try it, Glenn? Okay, you got it. Okay.